A vague disclaimer is no one's friend. This podcast will look at episodes in relation to Buffy and Angel as a whole, and therefore contains spoilers for the entirety of both series. If you haven't seen all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel the series, go and watch them before you listen to this. Remember, you've been warned.
The hardest thing in this world is to live in it.
That's why there's us, champions. We live as though the world were as it should be, to show it what it can be.
The Earth is definitely doomed.
It's Tuesday, so it must be time to return to the Hellmouth. We're going through the Buffyverse episode by episode and a look back at Joss Whedon's iconic show. I'm Emcee, and I'm here with...
This is Andie.
And this is David.
Today's episode is episode 6. It's The Pack. It originally aired April 7th, 1997. It was directed by Bruce Seth Green and written by Matt Keane and Joe Reichenmeyer.
Do we ever see them again?
I actually am not sure.
I don't. I don't think so.
They are definitely not ringing bells for me. So
it looks like they also did Inca Mummy Girl.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they did The Pack and Inca Mummy Girl. So apparently they like Xander a lot.
Apparently,
yes. Xander is cursed stories. That's.
I think those are the only stories that actually exist.
Xander is cursed?
Yeah. Is there an episode where Xander isn't something horrible happening to him?
There are definitely, terrible stuff does happen to him. He does get...
I mean, probably the closest to one where terrible stuff doesn't happen to him is Zeppo.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But still...
Well, terrible stuff happens, but it comes out okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Xander's pretty lucky. The terrible stuff kind of generally comes out okay. Unless it's of his own making.
Right.
And then I don't care if it doesn't turn out okay. You deserve it. I don't like Xander, which is sad because I used to really love Xander and it's just coloring my entire perception of all of it. So
yeah, it's definitely interesting going back to watch now and to see Xander now as when I am 33 years old and so over his bullshit.
Well, yeah, and just the sort of conversation that's sprung up around agency and the nice guy syndrome and all those things that we really weren't talking about in the 90s in sort of a detailed way. Sort of really... I mean, I would probably still think he was gross even without all that information that I now know about, because I'm at my very advanced age of 42. I would have probably been like, dude, really, kid? Come on.
We've talked about Xander and his nice guy syndrome, but I think, especially in this episode, we also have to get into what's going on with Willow and Xander, because, my God, she needs to shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, I had that in my notes. Like, there's always been this sort of, Xander has this thing, Willow has this thing for Xander. But this is, I think, the first episode where they really do something with it more than just having it just be there.
Yeah.
So this is clearly the first, the beginning of, yes, you really need to deal with this.
I mean, part of that I can excuse because, yeah, they're 15, they're 16 years old. I think I have a note about some of this stuff Xander really should take responsibility for, but when you don't have the emotional maturity to do that, it can be difficult. And probably the same holds true of Willow, especially since she's had absolutely no real experience with dating, or at this point, boys, because she's interested in boys at this point. She doesn't have any of that experience. So and a lot of the social experience that, say, Buffy has or Cordelia has to be able to, manage those feelings in an appropriate way.
If you're taking into account how Willow identifies later. I mean, of course, I think that by this point in society, Willow probably would be identifying as bisexual. It was just... in the 90s, it was a lot more binary. But if you do take her as being just a lesbian, it's possible that her feelings for Xander and not acting on them are a convenient way to suppress the sapphic, desires she has. She's like, oh, well, I'm interested in Xander, but I can't do anything about it, so.
Mm-hmm.
I read Willow as bisexual also, and one of the reasons is Joss said he didn't want to confuse audiences or all the uproar about the, lesbian death thing, that he didn't want to send her back to men and to fear of feeling insensitive to an audience. But I mean, I think she loved Xander. I think she loved Oz, and I think she loved Tara.
Yeah. I mean, we will definitely be getting into that a lot more as the seasons progress, but certainly coming up watching this stuff as a teenager actually Allie Hannigan really helped me realize my bisexuality and not being able to have that, said actually on the show really kind of, it ticked me off a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it ticked me off too, and I completely get it from the perspective of someone trying to explore those feelings and wanting to see themselves on screen in the world. So, yeah, I feel
So this episode starts off in the Sunnydale Zoo, which is apparently also Jurassic Park if you look at all of their signs.
It what?
All of their signs are done in the Jurassic Park font.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Huh.
Which if you think about that, Jurassic Park came out in 93, 94? Something like that?
I don't know. I'm not a Jurassic Park person,
Yeah,
so
me
I
neither.
have no...
If this is supposed to be like 96 or 97, then they've just redone all of their signs just to
look like
Jurassic Park came out in 93, so it's been out for like 3 years or so, and they redid their signs to be cool. Though I shouldn't really judge because I'm from a city where they named their basketball team after the fucking Raptors, so.
We have a baseball team that's named after the Isotopes. We're the Albuquerque Isotopes, and we actually renamed the team after the team in Springfield on The Simpsons. So there you go. So,
Makes sense to me, but yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. I mean, we're also the place where the atomic bomb was tested and invented. So there's that. But, we're named after the team in The Simpsons.
So the first thing that really comes out in this episode is that all of the bullies in Sunnydale are complete cardboard cutouts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And somehow we've never seen this clique of people before.
Well, we're only 5 episodes in.
Yeah. But we also never see them again.
Right.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I was bullied in school, and still, their bullying of Buffy was just like, what, they just randomly walk up to people and shit talk them? This is...
And not very well.
No.
No.
They're really just not trying, quite frankly.
And also, they're going up to Buffy, who was kicked out of school for burning down a fucking gym, and you're going to taunt her? Like, what is your damage?
And they even say, it's like, what are you going to do? Like, punch us or something? It's like, yeah, she kind of has a reputation for that. You really want to bring that up?
Right, well, but then when they can't seem to face her, of course they move on to a weaker person.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Because they know, they obviously see, as they're walking off cackling in their giant Western shirts with huge collars. Sorry, I have lots to say about the fashion of this episode too, because it's pretty insanely 90s. But they're, they realize they haven't gotten to her, so they're not going to pursue that avenue of bullying, because why bother? That's what I took from it.
Right. I mean, that's actually the most realistic thing about them as bullies. Because that is typical bully behavior. It's like, oh, this person isn't responding. We're not getting the response we want. Let's move on.
I was also kind of wondering about their dynamic, because it's like, are they two couples? Are they like platonic friends? Like, it's really weird to see like this group of bullies that are, mixed gender. Like, usually you have a group of mean girls, or you have a bunch of jerk jocks. It's
Right.
just, so I was trying to figure out, like, because I mean, the only time you kind of see them coupling up are when they're possessed, which,
Yeah, they really give us nothing to work with these. I mean, they really aren't characters. They're plot devices.
They basically act exactly the same when they're possessed as they do in the beginning.
Yes, except they sniff things more and do crazy eyes.
And cannibalism. So.
Right, yes.
And there's cannibalism, yeah.
We assume they don't do that.
Yeah, we assume. I mean, they're maybe like the hipster mean kids. Like if it were now, they would be those hipstery, instead of your normal jock bullies or your mean girl bullies. Yeah, I don't quite get them.
Yeah, they're basically what bullies would be like if they were preppies to begin with.
Yeah.
Which really is kind of pathetic. They're not good bullies.
They really aren't. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's probably why when they get possessed by a hyena, Xander becomes the alpha.
I know. I was wondering about that. I was like, how does Xander become like the leader of the pack? Oh, he's the only one who has a personality.
Well, in this beginning, we have Xander goes off to face all of them by himself.
Yes.
I mean, yes, he's trying to prove something to Buffy and Willow that, he's, strong man, but he's willing to help Lance out by himself. Meanwhile, those guys can only function as their little group. And I mean, you even see that with the pack dynamics, they only work as a pack, while Xander does go off on his own. So, yeah, Xander, I mean, even though it doesn't work with hyenas, because hyenas are matriarchal, so there should be a woman in charge.
True that.
But, yeah, Xander takes control because Xander is the only one in his, regular persona that is able to actually take charge. And also, I'm not saying that he fucked Ian Bailey, but I think he might have.
Which one was that?
He was kind of the main...
Oh, the dark-haired guy.
The dark-haired one, yeah.
So, odd little story here. Not odd. So, I looked up a couple hyena facts. I think we all did.
Yes.
But the funny thing is, when I looked at... I Googled hyena pack dynamics, and I'm looking through, and it was only about 6 things down where I started getting fan fiction for Xander and the pack. On the very first page of Google, where because I wanted a little bit more about pack dynamics to see how it would correlate with this episode. And yeah, about halfway down the page, you start getting Xander fan fiction. So apparently there isn't a lot of information on Google about pack dynamics. I don't know. So,
Or maybe the algorithm is just taking the word pack.
Or the fact that I Google Buffy all the time, maybe.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I Google Buffy things quite often. So, anyway, there is polyamorous fan fiction about the pack.
Oh, well,
if anybody wants to search. Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah, my main problem with the whole hyena facts thing is me being stupidly detail-oriented. There are basically 3 kinds of hyenas: spotted, striped, and brown.
Mm-hmm.
And from the little we see of the hyena that they get possessed by, it looks like a brown hyena. So a lot of the behavior they exhibit isn't the behavior of brown hyenas. It's they seem to be basing the entire concept of hyenas on spotted hyenas.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, spotted hyenas are the only ones that typically actually kill their prey. Striped and brown hyenas are more scavengers.
The spotted ones are also the ones known as the laughing hyenas.
The other ones apparently do laugh. The striped ones, at least. I'm not sure about brown. But the spotted hyenas have a wide range of sounds that they make, whereas the striped basically laugh and grunt. And I'm not sure about the browns, but yeah, and in fact, when attacked, the spotted hyenas are the ones who will actually initiate an offense, whereas the striped and brown hyenas will feign death. So they did not do their hyena research.
The video that Willow is watching is of African wild dogs, not even hyenas.
Right. Oh, and also, she's getting that kind of streaming quality in 1997 on the internet.
Maybe she checked out a video, a DVD-ROM about hyenas?
Maybe?
An educational something. That was my headcanon.
Back
Okay.
then, you could get like a Encarta DVD
Yeah, I guess.
or CD. I had one of those.
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, but if it was streaming, that's just like, no.
No. But my note was, but that hyena puppet though, huh?
Oh yeah,
Because that oh boy.
yeah. I said those hyenas look faker than the ones in The Lion King.
The Broadway production with the giant mask were better looking hyenas than that puppet. Yeah, for sure.
To be fair, The Lion King probably has a higher hyena budget.
True. Very true. And Whoopi Goldberg.
There
At
you
the
go.
very least, like, they didn't have to show the hyenas for very long in this. We only saw them for, 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think they're going to pour a lot of money into it.
Yeah. So yeah, hyenas.
Yes.
Yes.
But yeah, so was there any thought on anyone's part that the zookeeper isn't a bad guy from like the second you see him?
No, he comes off as pretty, sketchy to begin with.
He's just like this, like, okay, this guy's just creepy. There's
Yeah.
something wrong with this guy. So it's like there's no, like, it's not a reveal at the end.
No, he comes off as pretty sketchy, but oh, how sad is it when Giles gets his little feelings disappointed because he thought he'd met someone that liked research and books as much as he was so excited. He was making a male friend that
Yes.
loved books, and it just all got turned on its head, and poor Giles missed out on that.
I do feel bad
Instead,
for
he
Giles.
got knocked out again.
Yeah, he's not
shit.
good in a fight at this point.
Yeah, I almost thought to ask you guys, should we start keeping a Giles suffers head trauma count?
Okay, yeah, this is the second one because he gets knocked out in the witch.
Okay, so this is 2 blows to the head.
I will write that down and then we
Okay.
will keep track. Because
We will
one
keep track.
day he's going to wake up in a coma.
Thank you. What do we think this episode is actually saying?
We needed to put an episode on this week.
Here is something that might frame things really strangely for this entire conversation. This episode was actually on an Australian release of Joss Whedon's favorite episodes.
Buh?
They had an Australian DVD release of Joss Whedon's, I think 10 or 20 favorite episodes, and The Pack was on it. This is one of his favorite episodes.
When did that DVD come out?
I'm not sure. I can...
Because I'm just wondering if, like, to get 10, he had to choose some sketchy choices.
Right. Was this middle of season 3 where actually, no, I could think of 10 way better episodes by then to put on a DVD. Yeah, that's really odd. I have no idea what to think about it because for me, yeah, this is, while they were gross moments and I have lots to say about Xander, it's actually really kind of a boring episode, honestly.
Yeah, it really doesn't jump out at you as something where you're like, oh yeah, this is an episode. Well, yeah, I mean, or anything more than, oh, it's an episode.
Yeah, I have more to say about the fashion of this episode, honestly, which was either cracking me up or making me covet and want a TARDIS so I could go back and go clubbing in some of these outfits. And I really had to say about, I mean, I definitely have things to say, but, you know, it took me back visually into fashion more than the nostalgia factor. The thing I like about this episode is the cool outfits.
For me, I mean, I thought it was an okay episode, but
It was okay.
that was it. I mean, actually, in this one, I've tolerated Xander a lot more than I have in past episodes, just because he wasn't Xander for most of it.
Right, yeah, I gave him a bit more of a pass than usual, because it's like, oh, you're possessed.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Okay, see, I kind of don't give him a pass. I give him slightly a pass. The possession aspect brings out things from Xander that were already there.
That is true, and that's the one thing I won't give him a pass on.
That is true. I think it just, but he expresses these things in ways that I think regular Xander never would.
Oh no, I don't think he would ever do that, but he's already feeling very entitled to Buffy's affection and her attention. He is really pissy about her not wanting to date him, even though at this point he hasn't even tried to ask her out outright.
Yeah.
And it's just that grossness is being magnified.
Right.
Some of the stuff with Willow, it goes to show what he says to Willow, that he knows, he is totally aware of Willow's feelings for him. And he subtly, even when he's not possessed, sort of emotionally manipulates her for things like tutoring, fine, whatever, but also for emotional validation and sympathy and to make him feel better about himself. And I think that was already there. The possession brought it out. So I don't give him as much of a pass. I don't think he would have ever basically tried to sexually assault Buffy if he wasn't possessed. So that I will actually stand back and say, yeah, it might be inside him, but he would never. Of all the things I would say about Xander, I don't think Xander's ever gonna actually physically harm a woman.
No. I think when I say I give him a pass, I think on further reflection, I think what I'm saying is I give him a pass on the stuff that's worse than usual.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
It's like at this point we're 6 episodes in, and it's like, oh yeah, Xander does have some serious issues. But yeah, there's stuff he does here where it's like, oh yeah, no, he would not normally do that.
No, I absolutely concede that point. He would not.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, he knew if he tried anything, Buffy could just punch him and then he'd wake up in a coma.
Right.
I really do have to give Nikki Brendan credit for his acting in this episode.
Oh, yes.
He was fantastic. Because there's a definite difference between possessed Xander and regular Xander. But it's not so over the top that it's like, yes, that guy is possessed.
Yes.
It is. It comes on subtly, and I'm gonna say he's kind of sexy. Possessed Xander's a little sexy.
Where you're going with that? Yeah. There were some smoldering looks. That's why I'm saying. I think smoldering. That he fucked Ian Bailey's character. Because they were smoldering at each other a couple of times.
Yeah. They were smoldering.
And his scene where he's basically dumping Willow is fucking heartbreaking. And the way he delivers it, and then he breaks into that hyena laugh and is like, oh wow, this is actually like super good acting.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about this because throughout the series, all the main characters pretty much will have an opportunity to play against type. We'll have the episode where Buffy and Faith switch bodies, and Sarah and Eliza get to have to play each other. Willow obviously will have some very against type moments, and even Giles when we see
Band Candy.
Yes, Band Candy. And so this is really the first instance of something that we will see throughout the series of one of the major characters playing against type and doing a wonderful job. Well,
Excellent point,
wonderful is
David.
probably the wrong word in this case, but a very good job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that one of the reasons the series is so successful and has resonated with people for 20 years at this point is because of the casting of this show.
Yes.
Again, we complain about David Boreanaz's terrible acting in the first season, but he obviously went to an acting coach and he got better real fast.
Yes. Yeah, I think, even last time we saw him, he seemed to have improved.
And by next episode, he's going to be quite good.
And thank God, because if not, that would have been a big problem.
Yeah, you would have had to reverse a lot of the writing and the planning you had done because you just couldn't keep that character around. But yeah, I mean, I think the casting of the show, it's the writing, it's the plot, it's the metaphor, but these actors never got enough credit, I think, for really putting in performances that are grounded in emotional reality, even when everything going around where you're possessed by a hyena or you've body switched. Right. There's a lot of realism in those performances. And
well, I'm reminded of Sanford Meisner's definition of acting, which is basically the one that I've kind of landed on as the best description I've heard, which is behaving truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are extremely imaginary circumstances. And the fact that they can pull this off despite the complete unreality of a lot of the situations speaks incredibly well for the cast. And I think, yes, they are very underrated. People always underrate actors. They don't really think, oh, they've done like a really good job.
Well, and I think actors in sci-fi and fantasy are very much even more underrated because it's not that showy, Academy Award winning, also in horror movies. I've seen some amazing performances, better than what won the Academy Award that year, performances in genre television and film. And we don't give them credit. And David, I have to say, I kind of love you right now for quoting Meisner. I'm like, yay!
Yeah, no, I mean the Sanford Meisner on acting is a wonderful book.
I have a degree in acting before I went back to school to become a social worker, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and really, and we were talking. I was talking with you guys last week about Kevin Kline and Michael Palin in Fish Called Wanda. It's like, Kline got the Oscar for having the flashy role, which is what people go, oh, that's great. But Palin really does the much, in my opinion, much more impressive acting job because his character isn't as obviously flashy. It's a very subdued role, but he portrays it incredibly well. And I think that's true. Like what we're saying about genre acting is people don't, it's like, oh, it's genre acting. And it's like, no, it's not just genre acting. It's really good acting.
Yeah, it really is. And again, these are very grounded in reality performances. Yeah, it's really very character-y. They each have moments of, you get when Spike shows up next season, it's very showy and you can see what they're doing. But then the actor that they've chosen then puts the reality in it. Out of the core Scoobies, the core 4 Scoobies, I don't think any of them is the showboat, the look at me, the out there character. They're all very realistic kids.
One thing that did come up in this episode that it stuck out to me is I think probably the first time it's happened. It's Willow and Buffy actually getting to sit and have a conversation together without Xander there.
I have notes about that, but yes.
And the entire conversation is about boys.
Yep. I was going to say, does this pass the Bechdel test? Is this something we should be also taking notes on every episode? Like, well, this one did, but that one... Because overall, Buffy passes the Bechdel test. If people aren't familiar with the Bechdel test, it's basically like there's more than 2 named female characters who have dialogue about something other than men. That's the basic Bechdel test for film and television.
And it is the lowest bar.
It is the absolute lowest bar that anything could even hope to pass.
I think the only thing lower is the sexy lamp test. And that's, can this character be replaced by a sexy lamp? And would anybody notice?
I was not familiar with that test.
Yeah, and then I start picturing the leg lamp. Of course, I think we all do. The leg lamp from Christmas Story is the sexy lamp. Because it's a sexy lamp. But yeah, this episode doesn't pass the Bechdel test at all because all conversation between the girls is about boys.
Yeah. But I think this is the first time that we've actually seen them sitting down and talking without Xander being there, when it's just kind of the two of them. I can't recall it.
Yeah, I don't remember another instance.
I think the very first, they didn't really sit down, but the very first conversation in the pilot where she's like, hey, you seem like a person that knows what's going on here.
Right,
maybe, and she's like, oh, aren't you friends with Cordelia? She's like, I can't be both. And she's like, no, not really. That is, I think, a private conversation. But other than that, no, we haven't started to really build that role for them that becomes incredibly essential to both of them.
Willow is still
meh.
Not much of a character yet. We still haven't really gotten to delve deep into Willow outside of the fact that she's shy and nerdy and has a thing for Xander.
Yeah. They haven't developed her yet.
Yeah, this is very odd, though, because, like, I remember just loving Willow from the get-go.
Oh,
just thinking she was marvelous. But on this rewatch, I'm like, I have no opinion of you at this point. Because I'm trying to come in. Obviously, I have information about Buffy, but I am trying to at least look at the character development with fresh eyes and not be too colored by what happens later. And yeah, I have no real feelings about Willow at this point, except for Allie Hannigan's adorable.
Yeah. Actually, this episode is one of the first ones where I've gotten, like, an actual opinion on her, and that is, she's so fucking twee in this episode. It's really kind of annoying. Like, when they're having their conversation about boys, and, you know, she's talking about what Xander's blood pressure is, and later on, when she's like, why couldn't Xander be possessed by a puppy or some ducks? And I'm like, oh my god, just stop.
Is there a reason that these writers never wrote more than 2 episodes, right? Because they obviously didn't quite get those voices right. Because, not gonna lie, Willow can come off as really twee.
Yeah.
And as she develops, I actually, spoiler alert, stop liking her very much.
Yeah.
But in the first couple seasons, I loved her. And yeah, yes, we get a little character development here, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it's not good. It's not great writing of that character.
Yeah, she's still on the spectrum from plot device to character. She hasn't made it quite out of plot device yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, seriously, how did she survive in Sunnydale being so fucking naive? Where it's like, hey, stranger, I'm gonna let you tie my hands together. Oh, wait, so you're going to pretend to cut my throat?
I know. It's like, Willow, what are you doing?
I think that's like hyper rationalization at that point.
Yeah.
I think she's like, I mean, and okay, going with the character as we've seen her in this episode, I think she's sufficiently worried about Xander that she's not quite paying attention to what's going on around her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying she should be like that or that she will be like that later, but in this episode, that would not be a stretch.
Just in general, you know, don't let people tie your hands together
Right.
without, like, safe words set up first.
Right. Again, we have to realize this is not something that comes up that often, but it's it's a good rule.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't quite get Willow yet at this point.
Yeah, I think there just isn't enough to get yet.
Yeah.
Except that Allie is adorable.
Is adorable. Absolutely. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that Allie Hannigan's adorable.
Yes.
So.
But speaking of the cutting her throat, it's, again, I'm probably being over technical. You know, all the discussion of the predatory act, there never is an actual predatory act. There's intention towards a predatory act, but no predatory act ever occurs.
Yeah, it's not a predatory act, it's more an act of aggression that, you know, is kind of aborted.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they're going to throw Lance into the hyena pit, but they don't. He's going to cut Willow's throat, but he never does. And it's like, yeah, I think this whole possession magic thing is not worked out very well. So I think that's my thing, is I think later they will be much better about making the magic stuff make sense. And just at this point, they're really not. So I find it frustrating.
Yeah, again, we're season 1. We're finding our feet at this point.
Yeah,
no, I mean, I understand why, but it's still frustrating.
I also did some research on the Messiah, because this is an interesting episode in that they give a very specific culture that this came from.
Yes.
It's not like some like vaguey kind of like this is European or whatever. This is a very specific culture which has absolutely nothing to do with hyenas or animal possession or anything. I found out that the animal that they actually revere the most is the cow. because the cow provides nourishment to them.
Why couldn't Xander be possessed by a cow?
And also, they do not believe in animal possession. Not only do they not believe in animal possession, they don't believe in any sort of spirit possession. There are lots of other African cultures that do, but they chose one of the few that has no, concept of spiritual possession.
So basically, the writers did no research on this episode.
No. I am such a Buffy fan. Obviously, I'm doing a podcast. I love it so much. But there have been times in the history of this show where you're like, where did you get that name? Did you do anything to even look up what that is? We'll get to it when we come to using the word Wicca.
Yeah.
But where they use the names of actual cultural things instead of just making one up. I mean, you're a fantasy show. You don't need to name the Messiah.
Right.
Or you don't need to be as specific and then have it be completely wrong.
Yeah. It's the school of writing where it's like, oh, it's a recognizable name that no one really knows anything about, so we'll just use it. And it's like, no, don't do that. And
it becomes super freaking problematic when you're assigning, it to a culture. It's like, they have this group of people that, turn into animals and will, practice cannibalism and stuff like that. And here's a picture from Dante's Inferno to show what they do.
Oh, yeah, the picture killed me. It was like, what?
Yeah.
What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, the picture is by Gustave Doré, and it's an illustration from Dante's Inferno.
Lovely.
Hyenas figure into Dante's Inferno very importantly, I'm sure.
For sure. They're in, what circle of hell is that? I don't know, the fluffy circle of hell? That you didn't know, that was, the hidden Dante's writing. It's, the sequel.
Right.
The lost sequel, which is the fluffy circles of hell. And there is some suggestion online that the hyena stuff that's in the episode is actually based off of an Ethiopian legend called the Krokata, which is a wolf-like creature which shares the scientific name of the spotted hyena and is said to imitate human voices and call out to people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they probably did some research, but then it's like, let's make this realistic.
Right, but they didn't do much, because if this was an actual hyena pack, Xander would be getting kicked to the ground, and not be the alpha, and those two girls would be, all up in everything, and
yeah.
Imagine what would have happened if Buffy had gotten possessed by hyenas. That would have been some amazing matriarchal ass kicking and pseudo penises.
I was wondering if you were going to mention that.
Of course I was going to mention pseudo penises. I was like, how can you not get into an episode about hyenas without mentioning that female hyenas have pseudo penises that actually become erect when they are greeting other hyenas?
There's a fanfic that needs to be written.
Yeah, no, and they actually give birth through their pseudo penises. So 60% of all hyena babies will smother before they actually even get out. So they're my fun Andie facts about hyena penises.
I had noticed a thing in my research about male and female hyena genitalia being visually similar. I did not go into that detail, though.
I read one article. That's all it was. It's just about...
Well, clearly I was reading the wrong article.
Right, well, and I actually, instead of just Google hyena facts, I Googled the specific words like hyena pack dynamics. So, because I wanted to sort of know about the pack dynamic. And some of it is actually kind of what happens in the episode with hierarchy and aggressive behavior and the taking down of, prey and things like that. But most of it is kind of wrong.
So we get our first death of a real recurring character in this episode. So
yes, we do.
We should have a little bit of a, memorial service for Principal Bob Flutie.
Indeed. Flutie was... he had a good heart.
Fluty's fun. He really is. He's kind of this really fun and effectual, kind of stereotype of the caring teacher that wants to hear about your feelings, but not really.
Right. Mm-hmm. He does care, but he does. And in fact, in this episode, he actually, it becomes clear that he realizes that he's not necessarily giving them what they need.
Yeah, I really do like his line where he's like, of course, when I was your age, I had old guys telling me how much better things were when they were my age.
Exactly.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you're going to get eaten in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, and he's clearly sincere about that. It's not just a platitude.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm trying, but I know that, I'm just this old guy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think my friends that are school counselors would probably tell me very similar things. So that they try, but they
Yeah.
They're a lot less ineffectual than Flutie. My friends that are school social workers are very good at their jobs. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this is one of those the second instance of anybody can die. Because the first one was obviously Jesse, but he wasn't recurring. And I think it is setting up that expectation that really not everybody is going to be safe and things could happen. Mm-hmm. And then can we have a eulogy for Herbert?
Yes.
Oh, Herbert.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, Herbert.
I feel terrible for Herbert.
I do too.
I liked Herbert so much.
Sarah Michelle Gellar was so cute when she was holding that pig.
I know.
Yes.
She's precious. Because I can handle so much gore and violence in my media, no problem at all. But you threaten the life of an animal or hurt an animal, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, for as much trouble as I give Xander, I actually feel really bad that he has that memory.
Of eating, yeah.
Yes.
He has the memory of eating a pig alive. I mean, that's horrific. So I think we need to talk about the hyena in the room. And that is the attempted rape scene. Just the first time that it's come up on Buffy, and sadly, it is not the last.
Oh, absolutely not.
So we've already mentioned earlier in this podcast that, for some of Xander's more extreme actions, we don't think that he's entirely culpable, but I mean, there's certainly an element of Xander in there, because
the motivations exist even if the will to act wouldn't have under other circumstances.
Yeah, I said earlier and I did sort of defend and say, I don't think Xander himself would ever really want to hurt or do these things, nor do I think he actually fantasizes about assaulting people. Well, okay, not women. He maybe punch someone in the face, but yeah, some of the bad stuff that's in there and the entitlement and the nice guyness, it's exacerbated by his possession.
Yeah, it ties to the last couple of episodes I've mentioned. Xander's toxic masculinity and wanting to conquer Buffy more than actually having an attraction towards her, in that he there's this strong woman that he feels that oh well, I got to be the man and take over here, and that's kind of just the hyena just brings out this extreme version of it, and unfortunately in this very violent and problematic way.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we know of Xander now and later on, looking forward, is that he's incredibly attracted to strong women. And I think there's a part of him that really, wants to be with strong women, wants to have that sort of liberating experience of not having to have this masculine yuckiness. And not that all masculinity is yucky, but that toxic masculinity yuckiness, and be an equal partner in a relationship. But a lot of it is ingrained. We know that he does not have the greatest home life, and it's manifested in a lot of stuff for him, but it's there. It's definitely there inside.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not the last time it's going to come up, but I do have a note on it where it's like, hey, it's the first one.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. The first time that, It's also, I've got a better first. It's the first time they used the book cage to lock somebody up.
Yes, which will happen many, many times.
Which will happen many, many times, so...
Which is interesting, because they rip it apart here.
That is true.
I'm just trying to figure out how they explain it to the school.
The school's pretty busy with the cannibalized principal.
Good
True,
point.
Yeah.
Good point. But budget line items like new cage for library is probably not their priority.
I was wondering if some of that stuff might get charged to the Watchers Council.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility. And also, they could have said that the wild dogs ran through the library before they went and ate Principal Flutie. I don't know. Now I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah. One thought occurred to me just now about the sexual assault scene. I'd be interested to compare how sexual assault is handled on Buffy to how it's handled on Veronica Mars, which is a much later show.
And took many cues from Buffy.
Yes.
It really did.
Oh, it did. And there are some like major sexual assault plot lines there.
There are, and they're not always handled with the utmost of care either.
Yeah, no, it
like
really is
that is one of the sort of, and I love Veronica Mars.
Oh yeah,
like,
Veronica
do
Mars
not
is
get me
wonderful.
wrong.
I'd
so
be interested
great
to compare and contrast, though.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, but Veronica Mars really is sort of the spiritual successor to Buffy.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, yeah, absolutely.
And they talk about shows that came out later, like Charmed and those things being very Buffy, and they're not nearly as Buffy-esque.
Veronica Mars is Buffy as a noir without the supernatural elements.
Yeah, take out the and you still have like a tiny blonde chick that's awesome.
Yeah.
And fighting crime in her own way.
Develops her own little
Scooby Gang.
Outsiders.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, Joss liked Veronica Mars so much that he made a cameo.
Yeah.
So, And, you have lots of different crossover. You have both Allie Hannigan and Charisma Carpenter that both show up on Veronica Mars.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, now I want to watch Veronica Mars.
Shh, that's the next podcast.
Oh, well, if we're doing that, you have to let me know, because I lent out my DVDs, so...
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of years of this.
Yeah, we've got a couple of years. We'll revisit Veronica Mars at 10 years or 20 years or something like that. That'll be fun. We'll be in a nursing home all together recording a podcast about Veronica Mars.
I said before how I don't really blame Xander for most of the stuff that happens in this episode. There's one thing I do blame Xander for.
I think I know where you're going.
And that is the very end.
The lying about it.
The lying about it.
Yeah.
Xander is not really responsible for anything that happened. It's like, dude, you were possessed by a hyena. But he so does not want repercussions that he's not even willing to talk about anything that happened because, well, he's hurt Willow's feelings. He's revealed that he knows that Willow has feelings for him. And he's been very open about the fact that he's attracted to Buffy.
Yeah.
And he just can't deal with any of this stuff at all. So he's like, I can't remember it,
And, Giles is a little culpable in that scene too, because he's like, yeah, I'll take it to my grave.
Yeah.
He's not going to narc him out. I mean, Giles probably has an understanding of the mind of a 16-year-old boy that is not emotionally ready to be able to deal with and have an emotionally mature conversation about an attempted sexual assault.
Yeah.
So I will give Xander that, I always come from this like psychology, theory perspective when I'm talking about a lot of this stuff. 'Cause that's kind of where I'm at in my life. So, but Xander also is going to have a history of not owning up to actions.
Yeah.
So this is just the first in a long line of, I'm going to pretend this didn't happen. I'm never going to address it. I'm going to burrow it all inside and just never talk about it.
Yeah, I almost don't even think that it has to do with, the sexual assault. Because, I mean, like, they tell him at the end of the episode how he ate a live pig. It all has to do with the fact about his, relationship with Buffy and Willow, about, all of, him revealing that, he doesn't want to have to deal with the fact that he is outwardly addressed his feelings to Buffy. He doesn't want to address the fact that he's admitted that he knows how Willow feels about him. And I'm trying to actually think, when does it become common knowledge that Xander knows how Willow feels about him?
Oh, let me see. Is it not till he starts dating Cordelia?
Well, I know that there is a reference to it in Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered.
Right, but she's already dating Oz,
But
and
she's already dating Oz,
and he's already seeing Cordelia.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only time that I can think of it being, like, just super, like, stated. Which is, that's a season from now, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Xander also, I think, doesn't want to have to deal with people thinking he's a bad guy. Because who really, honestly, wants people to see them as... So if he can lie and say he doesn't remember any of it, he also doesn't have to deal with them telling him and then telling him he did bad things and feeling bad about them telling him he did bad things and dealing with the consequences of someone not liking you. But then on the same term, the girls don't get to process any of it that has happened with the person that it happened with. They can process with each other, but they're never going to be able to process that information with Xander, I'm taking too many psychology courses, apparently. Yeah.
I mean, my only comment is, it's like, if Xander did own up to it, I have no idea how he would have any facility for actually dealing with it.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
Trying to look at it from Xander's perspective, it's like he's a 16-year-old boy. It's like, this is just something he's doesn't have the tools for at all. And so, I mean, I wouldn't say how he's handling it is a good thing, but I'm not sure how else he, in his situation, could handle it.
He will get called out on it in phases because he decides he's the expert on finding werewolves because he knows how to get, in touch with your inner animal. And Buffy says, I thought you didn't remember anything about that.
Right. And the thing is, though, I'd like, by that point, maybe he would have lived with this long enough that he can now deal with it. I mean, again, we're trying to address real world concerns with fictional characters, so it's hard to really say anything definitive.
Yeah, I mean, this may be the best thing that he can do at this point is just to say it didn't happen. And it's kind of gross, it's kind of icky, but I don't know. I'm actually kind of going to defend him here and say, well, do we really want to watch 3 episodes of the emotional fallout of Xander's actions in the pack? We don't. We need to move on from it. Yeah, we need to move on for it and get to other stories.
Yeah, because this one wasn't very good.
Because this one wasn't very good, and why do we need to readdress that? Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's nothing that indicates that he's not living with this and processing it himself.
Yeah.
So it's
or with
it's
Giles.
Or
with Giles. You never know.
So it's I think he is doing what he can at this time in his life. Maybe. Again, who knows?
I bet that he will never be able to watch Babe again without feeling really bad.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Herbert. Oh, I liked Herbert.
I love Herbert.
He gets a very nice little memorial in the Sunnydale High yearbook.
Yeah, I know. I remember. I really need to go dig that thing out because I want to look at it.
Just because I do it every week. There were 3 songs played in this episode. We had All You Want by Dashboard Prophets, which was at the Bronze when Xander takes over the pack. Reluctant Man by Sprung Monkey when Kyle and his friends enter the bronze. And Job's Eyes by Far, and that's for the slow-mo power walk.
Yeah, it wasn't the best slow-mo power walk montage ever. It's like, kind of a lame one. But but we've seen Sprung Monkey and before, right? On the soundtrack?
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we have too.
And there is also a discussion about a band that does not appear to exist when the pack comes to the two guys who are having hot dogs at the bench, and they discuss wretched refuse, who do not seem to exist, although it's a reference to the Emma Lazarus poem on the Statue of Liberty. So...
And also, Xander seems to have friends because these guys seem to, get along with Xander.
Yeah.
At least, I think people probably like Xander. I'm sure he's not the most popular in that terms of, the social hierarchy that Cordelia is part of. But at the same time, obviously, he's kind of like stonery kid, just your regular, everyday, average high school student. They probably think Xander's hilarious.
Xander's a cute and funny guy. Of course, he's going to have some people who like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, they kind of like, they come to him as like a guy who would have an opinion on this thing. And as the person who people used to literally call during Trivial Pursuit games to make sure the cards were right, I not that I didn't have friends, but I definitely had people who would just call. It's like, hey, this Trivial Pursuit card says this. Is that right? And I would tell them, and it's so they're like, yeah, Xander, what do you think of this guy in this band? And it's like, I definitely got that feeling.
I actually, people used to do the same thing to me, David. They would call me, and this is before you could fact check everything on your smartphone.
Right.
And they'd be like, so who was the name of the actress in The Goonies? Not the redhead. I was like, Martha Plimpton. Her name is Martha Plimpton, and the character's name is Death. And they're like, great, we just settled a bar bet because of you. And I'd be like, yeah. Can you not call me at 1:00 in the morning next time? That would be great.
Oh, yeah. I literally,
yeah.
when Trivial Pursuit came out with the silver screen edition, I still have that, and it is still unplayed because everyone refused to play it with me.
I feel bad sometimes when I'm too good at things, and I know I shouldn't, but there have been times where I've gotten way too far ahead in some kind of trivia game and sort of like threw a question or two, because people just don't want to play with me, which is why I play Pub Quiz, because everybody's there to play and compete, so I do not have to worry if my 16-year-old niece is going to feel bad that I know everything about movies.
Yes.
There you go.
I feel your pain.
I think we've reached the point where it's the final thoughts on the pack.
Yeah.
Very little.
It was certainly an episode.
I think it sparked some nice discussion between y'all. Y'all meaning all of us. But yeah, no, I mean, I remember it being a lot more dramatic than it is. It's really kind of an episode.
Yeah, I actually expected it to be much less pleasant, or rather, more unpleasant when I going in, and then I was like,
yeah.
There's a lot of silence in it. I noticed that there's a lot of scenes where it's just the pack walking and just staring intensely
and sniffing.
Oh, I
things.
wonder if that's because this episode is kind of underwritten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what is written? I mean, I have a note here. Like, this episode is about as subtle as a mallet.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Hey, it's still better than Teacher's Pet. Because this is what the marker, this is the, litmus test for me, for Andie, is it better than Teacher's Pet? I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah, I think right now that's my litmus.
Yep.
It's like, the Teacher's Pet is the worst. But at this point, I'm trying to think what I think the best is at this point.
So far?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I guess it's only been a couple episodes, but...
The Witch?
I think, yeah, if you're not including the pilot.
Yeah, I was thinking either the pilot or the Witch. That's
the
pilot of The Witch. Yeah, I mean, The Witch is a fun episode too. It's just, it's a lot of fun. So up to this point,
I mean, a couple episodes from now, we'll start to get into some episodes that I think are a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Certainly, Angel's next, so that'll be...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely getting into a good one.
Yeah. And not just good, but solid and important.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a major key into the Buffyverse. Absolutely. It pretty much informs everything going ahead, so I'm looking forward to doing that one.
So am I. So, we will be reviewing Angel next time. So I think until then, grr, arg.
Grr, arg.
Grr, arg.
We'd like to thank everyone who downloaded the podcast, and an extra special thanks to everyone who shared, liked, and subscribed on social media. Over on Facebook, Dawn asked us to share our unofficial Buffy soundtrack, which would be awesome to do. When I get some free time, I'll make up a Spotify playlist. If you'd like your questions or comments read on the show, you can contact us on our website, returntothehellmouth.com, on YouTube at Return to the Hellmouth, on Tumblr and Facebook at Return to the Hellmouth, on Twitter at HellmouthReturn, or on email at returntothehellmouth@gmail.com. We'll be sure to read your comments on the show. Be sure to rate our show at iTunes and Stitcher. Last week, I posted a defense of Joss Whedon on my YouTube show, Fandom Equals Square MC. Be sure to check that out, as well as my other videos. See you on Tuesday for Angel.
Grr, arg.